What's happening, guys? Welcome back to my channel. This is Cash Talks, place where you guys get to become the best version of yourself. So in this video, we're going to be going through how to take control over your life. Now, I'm going to start by saying this one very specific thing. The truth is, problems are going to come regardless in our life. Whether it's in relationships or whether it's in our career or even our own personal life, it's going to happen. Now, I can't give you a magic formula that's going to make the problem go away. But what I can give you is the wisdom and the tools to basically ride that wave and overcome those challenges in the best way possible so that you guys come out better on the other side. Stoicism is a philosophy that came about in ancient Greece and ancient Rome to basically navigate problems in life, to overcome problems. And the fact is, if we're gonna go through problems, we might as well get equipped. The sooner, the better. Famous people today actually adopt this philosophy. You know, people like Nelson Mandela, President Roosevelt, entrepreneurs like Tim Ferris, and also obviously ancient people like Marcus Aurelius, who was a Roman emperor, which we'll go into in this video. Now, the reason I actually want to talk about this philosophy is because I came across Marcus Aurelius when I heard his story. This guy was a Roman emperor who basically led two famous wars at the same time as dealing with the loss of multiple of his children. So he was managing like 20% of the entire population, because the Roman Empire was huge, whilst also dealing with his own personal problems. And when I kind of heard that, it was almost like a major scale of what goes on in our life. We have things that we need to do. We have jobs that we need to go to. We have family issues that we need to deal with. But at the same time, we've got our own personal crap that goes on. And how is it that we can deal with both and actually take control over our entire life to direct it in the way that we want it to go to? So Stoicism is summarized in 3 pillars. Now, these 3 pillars, basically, once you get to grips with them and apply them, you will be able to take control over your life and emotions so much better. So the first pillar of Stoicism to help take control over your life is to focus only on what you can control. And now that sounds easier said than done, but what the Stoics believed is that we live in a world that is governed by solely cause and effect. Basically, what goes around comes around, karma. And that's actually a similarity I drew with Stoicism, one of many, with other philosophies, things like Vedic philosophy and things like Buddhist teachings. And once you kind of understand and get to grips with this idea that everything simply has a cause and effect, it becomes a lot easier to accept things that are outside of your control. And that is the basis of Stoicism, this idea that things will happen in our life. Problems will come about. Challenges will come to us regardless, whether it's a breakup, whether it's a job loss, whether it's a loss of a possession. But the point is that once we come to terms with accepting it, only then can we finally find emotional peace. See, when something happens in our life, the event isn't actually a negative event. It's our resistance to the event that causes emotional pain. So when something goes on in our life and we're not happy with it, that's where we find pain. The actual event isn't giving us pain. I'll give you an example. Someone loses a job. You've got person A who looks at that loss of a job as the worst thing that happened to their entire life and gets depressed. Another person looks at that loss of a job and sees it as the best opportunity of their entire life to then go on and start a multi-million-dollar business. My point being here is it's just a matter of perception. One chose to accept what had happened and chose to make the best out of a bad situation, and the other chose to resist what had happened and therefore became depressed as a result. And that's kind of my point here. See, the Stoics accepted what wasn't in their control and therefore only chose to focus on what was in their control. Now, don't just make this about situations in your life. It could mean a person. It could mean the past. It could mean the future. All of these things are outside of our control. But we never sit down and reflect and actually understand and take this in, that actually there's nothing I can do. Our mind will just convince us to keep overthinking and trying to find solutions and trying to hold on to situations which it knows deep down is not in its control. But it tries to convince you that it somehow is. So point being, the first pillar, only focus what is in your control and find acceptance with things that are outside of your control. And now if you really want to take this to a higher level, my spiritual teacher speaks to me about this all the time, this idea of surrender. When you surrender to a higher power, whether it's God, whether it's the universe, whether it's some divine personality that you believe in, when you surrender to that higher power to take care of things that are outside of your control, you can find a lot more peace with what's going on. Okay, so now the next pillar is to take responsibility. So we've already understood that you need to only focus on what's in your control. Now you do that by taking responsibility of how you perceive a situation. So say something may happen in a situation, a person or a situation, something's happened. Now, you can either react to that situation, or you can take responsibility and respond to the situation. Now, this means to consciously choose how you are going to give this situation a meaning, a judgment, and perception. So for example, you come home, dishes are a mess. Either you can get angry, or you can choose to see this as an opportunity for you to find patience, for you to practice forgiveness, for you to maybe find a therapeutic act after a long day of work. My point being is you take responsibility of a situation that has happened and how you perceive that situation. I'll give you an example of a true story here. There was a soldier who was fighting for the US military in the Vietnam War. Now, his name was Captain Jeffrey Coffey, from what I remember. And he was flying a plane over Vietnam with two of his friends. They got shot down and held as prisoners in Vietnam for the next 7 years after that plane crash. Now, in those 7 years, they were tortured. They were held in a prison cell, and they were tortured by keeping their hands behind their backs and then roped to their legs. So they were basically like this. Point being, it was really, really torturous. And that wasn't just a one-off thing. That was regularly done to them. And they were given only 2 meals a day, and these meals weren't adequate in the slightest, and they were just kept in this confined space regularly. I'm talking about solitary confinement. And you can imagine, after 7 years, that would be traumatic. The truth is, one friend died, and the other friend, after those 7 years, ended up in a psychiatric ward. But Captain Jeffrey, on the other hand, went on to speaking at multiple events and multiple conferences all over the world, sharing his story. Why is that? They asked him, do you regret those 7 years? And he says he wouldn't change those 7 years no matter what. He says those were the best 7 years of his life. Not necessarily the best in terms of the most enjoyment, but those 7 years provided so much opportunity for growth and so much opportunity for him to connect with himself. Now, my question to you is, why did he not die? Why did he not end up, being traumatized by it? It's a traumatic experience. And the real answer is, he took responsibility in that situation. He chose to judge the situation completely differently to his friends. The situation had already been presented. It goes back to things that are outside of our control, this idea of karma. So he knew that he's going to be in this situation and he doesn't know when he's going to get out. But he chose to give the situation a completely different meaning. He chose to connect more with God in that situation. He chose to take more lessons from that situation. He chose not only to find peace in the situation, but also an opportunity for growth. And that's my point here. This idea of having a situation presented in front of you and you asking yourself the question, okay, what am I going to give this? What meaning am I going to give this situation to benefit me and my life? One of the key personalities of Stoicism is Marcus Aurelius, but also there is another guy, and his name was Epictetus. I think that's how you pronounce it. Now, he wasn't a famous leader. He wasn't a famous politician. He was a slave, and he was regularly abused as a slave. Yet he adopted Stoicism to find happiness in the situation and take control over his life. See, he chose to judge the situation completely differently. And he lived by 2 rules as part of this Stoic philosophy. Number 1 is there is nothing good or bad unless we choose to make it so. And it all goes back to that quote that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And the second rule he had was that we shouldn't try to lead events, but we should try to follow them. This idea that, okay, we shouldn't try to take control of things that are outside of our control. We should accept what comes into us and follow them by taking responsibility on how we can make lemonade out of lemons. By you taking responsibility over your own emotions and how you perceive things, only then can you choose to live a happier life. And that's just a fact. The rain is always going to come. You can't stop the weather. You can't stop your boss from being terrible towards you. You can't stop certain people in your life from being present and having a negative impact. What you can choose to do, and this goes back to focusing on what you can control, is how you generate your feelings and how you generate your emotions. If you choose to give something meaning, you'll give it a different type of emotion. If you choose, by someone else upsetting you, to see that as an opportunity for you to grow and you to learn tolerance and you to learn forgiveness and compassion, I guarantee you're going to have a better emotion towards that person or towards yourself. So basically, in summary, take responsibility. That's the second pillar. And the third pillar of Stoicism, and this is why you're watching this channel, is to be the best version of yourself in every single moment. So we focus on what we can control by, number 1, taking responsibility, but number two, taking action. And taking action means to live as our best version of ourselves at every single moment. You can see that literally practically in your life. For example, you may want to stop this video right now because you want to go scroll on Instagram, because your attention span isn't where it needs to be. And that's fine. But by you doing that, naturally, you are restricting yourself of the wisdom and the knowledge that will better equip you to solve problems in the future. So, if you were living your best version of yourself, you wouldn't go to scroll on Instagram, you would continue watching this video, and then therefore, you would have the wisdom and the capability to better deal with your problems in the future. Now, more specifically, the Stoics actually express their best version of themselves in 4 different areas. So number 1, they focus on the wisdom. How can they understand how to act and navigate in the most logical, best way of a situation? So for example, how can they perceive it in the best way? How can they act responsibly in the best way? How can they take a good judgment of the situation in the best way? How can they gain a sound understanding of what's going on? Maybe both sides of a situation, for example. Now, the second area they focus on being the best version of themselves is through justice. How can they deal with the situation fairly? How can they deal with it morally? Maybe someone's done you wrong and you want to just get revenge and get back at them. But is that being the best version of yourself? See, the best version of yourself would deal with it with compassion, with forgiveness, with humility, and in a just and fair way. And that would naturally lead to a better result than if you just went out and got revenge. Because let's be honest, revenge will only lead to more suffering later down the line. And now the third area in which that they choose to be the best version of themselves is through courage, which means to act bravely, face the challenge head on, but with integrity at the same time. And the fourth area in which they choose to become the best version of themselves is through self-control or self-discipline. Now, we know full well that that is the key to becoming the best version of yourself, whether it's your productivity levels or whether it's handling your emotions. And that is what it literally is about. Like, it's this idea of dealing with a situation, but not in the way your emotions want to, but in the way that you know is best. And that is a big part of self-discipline. Maybe your emotions just want to stay in bed all day and do absolutely nothing. But you know full well that that's not going to lead to a good result. So it's this idea of overcoming the inner resistance that may come about, or overcoming the emotions that may drag you in wrong areas, and just choosing to stay disciplined to navigate in the right way. So ultimately, the Stoics would have an idea of the best version of themselves, and they would close that gap as much as possible on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. So in any situation, they are always trying to think, how would the best version of myself deal with this in the right way? You may be going through a breakup, you may be going through some other problem. Ask yourself, what is the best version of myself doing in this situation? Is it doing what I'm currently doing? And if not, I need to close that gap ASAP. So ultimately, in summary, things are going to go on in our life. And that's a fact. And I wish I could tell you guys that things aren't going to go wrong and there's a simple solution and a magic formula that I can give you, and you go away and no other problem ever enters your life again. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Timeless knowledge has told us things like the Bhagavad Gita, things like Buddha's teachings, like knowledge from thousands and thousands of years ago have told us that we're living in a material world. We are in a world full of anxieties. It is the nature of the world that we're living in. But that's okay, because there are solutions to navigate these problems, to connect ourselves to a higher level, to basically level up. So when these situations come about, in summary, choose firstly what you can control and what you can't control. And what you can't control, you accept. And even better than that, surrender. And what you can control is 2 things: your judgment of the situation and the actions you take. And your judgment of the situation should be positive. It should be based on, what is this trying to teach me? How can I draw the best meaning out of this situation? How can I grow from this situation? And your action towards the situation is, how can I live as my best self in this situation? What is the best version of myself meant to do in this situation? And in doing that, you will 100% better navigate any problem that comes in your life. You'll better take care of your emotions and your life. So I hope you guys really like this video. Stoicism is a powerful philosophy, and more important than that, I want to share with you all the philosophies that I'm learning about and how I use it for my own personal development and how you guys can use it for your own personal development. So if you like this video, please drop a like, because I really want to make a series out of this. And definitely hit that subscribe button, because that subscribe button is going to let you know when I make another video on this topic or related to this topic. So hit that subscribe button and I'll catch you guys next week. So thanks for watching. Cash Talks is out.